I never thought kindness could be criticized until it became the thing people mocked me for. My name is Margaret. I'm 53 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life believing that helping others was simply the right thing to do. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where neighbors looked out for each other, where lending a hand wasn't unusual, but expected. When I moved to Chicago in my late 20s for work, I carried those values with me like precious cargo. But over the years, I noticed the city had a different rhythm, a different set of rules. People rushed past each other on sidewalks, eyes glued to phones, rarely acknowledging the person next to them. Still, I couldn't shake the habits my parents had instilled in me. I worked as an administrative coordinator at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me structure. My boss, Richard, was a sharp-dressed man in his early 40s who prided himself on efficiency and results. He had little patience for what he called distractions, and even less for sentimentality. My co-workers were pleasant enough, though most kept to themselves, focused on climbing the corporate ladder. I didn't mind. I found meaning in the small things, organizing files perfectly, remembering everyone's coffee orders, making sure the office ran smoothly. My personal life was equally routine. I'd been married to Tom for 28 years. We'd met in college, married young, and built what I thought was a solid life together. We had 2 grown children who'd moved to different states for their careers, and Tom worked as an accountant at a firm across town. Somewhere along the way, though, our marriage had become more like a business partnership than a love story. We shared a house, split bills, and occasionally had dinner together, but the warmth had faded. Tom had grown cynical over the years, dismissive of anything he considered impractical or overly emotional. When I'd come home excited about something, he'd often respond with a grunt or a comment about how I needed to live in the real world. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when everything started to shift. The air had that crisp quality that signaled autumn's arrival, and I'd decided to walk to work instead of taking the train. The route took me past a small park where elderly folks often sat on benches, feeding pigeons or reading newspapers. That's where I saw her for the first time. An older woman, probably in her 70s, struggling with several grocery bags that seemed ready to tear. She wore a faded blue cardigan and had white hair pulled back in a loose bun. Her face showed strain as she tried to balance everything while fumbling for something in her purse. Without thinking, I approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you with those bags?" She looked up, startled, then smiled with obvious relief. "Oh, would you? That would be wonderful. I seem to have bought more than I can carry." I took 3 of the heavier bags, and we walked together. She lived only 2 blocks away in a modest apartment building. Along the way, she told me her name was Dorothy, that she'd lived in Chicago for over 40 years, and that her husband had passed away 3 years prior. She spoke with a gentle warmth that reminded me of my own grandmother. When we reached her building, she thanked me profusely and pressed a worn $5 bill into my hand, which I politely refused. "Please, you've already done so much," she insisted. "It was my pleasure," I said honestly. "Take care of yourself, Dorothy." That small interaction stayed with me throughout the day, giving me a quiet satisfaction that the endless spreadsheets and meeting notes couldn't provide. I arrived at the office 15 minutes late, something Richard noticed immediately. He appeared at my desk before I'd even set down my bag. "Margaret, you're late. We have the Henderson presentation at 9:30. "I know, Richard. I'm sorry. I stopped to help someone and it took longer than expected." He raised an eyebrow. "Stopped to help someone? Margaret, your job is here, not playing Good Samaritan on the streets." I felt my cheeks flush, but nodded and quickly got to work preparing the conference room. Throughout the morning, though, I caught Richard giving me skeptical looks, as if I'd committed some unforgivable offense. During lunch, my coworker Jennifer asked what had happened, and when I explained, she smiled sympathetically but said, "You're sweet, Margaret, but you've got to watch out for yourself in this city. People take advantage." That evening, I told Tom about Dorothy over dinner. He barely looked up from his plate. "You gave away your time to a stranger? Margaret, you're going to be late to work and lose your job over stuff like that." "I was 15 minutes late, Tom, and she needed help." He shook his head. "You're too soft. Always have been. The world doesn't reward that, you know." His words stung more than I wanted to admit. Was kindness really something to be ashamed of? I went to bed that night questioning myself, wondering if everyone else was right, and I was just foolishly naive. A week later, I saw Dorothy again in the same park. This time she was sitting on a bench. looking tired and slightly confused while staring at her phone. I recognized her immediately and walked over. "Dorothy, remember me?" Her face brightened. "Oh, yes, the kind young woman who helped me with my groceries. How lovely to see you." I laughed at being called young at 53. "Is everything all right?" She sighed. "I'm trying to use this rideshare application my grandson set up for me, but I can't seem to make it work. I have a doctor's appointment across town in 30 minutes. I sat down beside her and looked at her phone. The app was open, but she'd gotten stuck on a screen asking for payment confirmation. I walked her through it step by step, helped her request a ride, and waited with her until the car arrived. She squeezed my hand before getting in. "You're an angel, dear. Thank you." This time, I was 20 minutes late to work. Richard was less understanding. "Margaret, this is becoming a pattern. I need someone I can rely on to be here on time, every time." "I understand, Richard. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. We're not running a charity here." That word charity felt like a slap. That evening, when I mentioned the incident to Tom, he actually rolled his eyes. It was a gesture so dismissive, so full of contempt, that I felt something inside me crack. "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than usual. "You're doing it again, Margaret, letting strangers dictate your schedule. You're going to get yourself fired, and then what? You think that old lady is going to pay our mortgage? She needed help, Tom, and you need a reality check." He stood up and left the table, leaving me sitting alone with my half-eaten dinner. I lay awake that night, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. When had my life become so small? When had helping someone become something to hide or apologize for? I thought about my marriage, about the distance between Tom and me that had grown so vast I couldn't remember the last time we'd really talked, really connected. I thought about my job, where I was valued only for my punctuality and efficiency, not for who I was as a person. I felt invisible, like I was disappearing into a routine that meant nothing. The following Monday, I encountered Dorothy a third time. She was at a bus stop, looking distressed and holding a piece of paper. When she saw me, she actually started crying with relief. "Oh, thank goodness, I'm so lost. I was supposed to meet my daughter at a restaurant for lunch, but I got on the wrong bus, and now I don't know where I am." I looked at the address on the paper and checked my phone. The restaurant was 20 minutes away by train. I was already running late for work, but looking at Dorothy's frightened face, I couldn't just leave her. "Come on," I said gently. "I'll take you there." We rode the train together, and Dorothy talked about her daughter, about how she worried she was becoming a burden to her family, about how the city had changed so much she barely recognized it anymore. I listened, really listened, and realized how lonely she must be. When we arrived at the restaurant, her daughter was waiting anxiously outside. She hugged Dorothy, then turned to me with grateful tears in her eyes. "Thank you so much for helping my mother. I've been so worried. She has early-stage dementia, and we're trying to keep her independent, but days like this scare me." "I'm glad I could help," I said sincerely. I arrived at the office 45 minutes late. Richard was waiting at my desk, his face red with anger. My office. Now. I followed him, my heart pounding. He closed the door and turned to face me. "Margaret, I've tried to be patient, but this is unacceptable. 3 times in 2 weeks you've been significantly late. What's your excuse this time?" "I was helping someone who needed assistance." "Helping someone?" He laughed bitterly. "Margaret, you're not a social worker. You're an administrative coordinator, and a pretty average one at that if you can't even show up on time. You're naive if you think being nice to strangers is more important than your job." That word again. Naive. As if compassion was a character flaw. "I understand your frustration, Richard, but I helped an elderly woman with dementia find her daughter. I couldn't just leave her lost and frightened. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to this company, to this team, and frankly, Margaret, you're failing. Consider this your formal warning. One more late arrival, and we'll have to discuss your future here." I walked back to my desk feeling numb. My coworkers avoided eye contact, probably having heard everything through the thin walls. I mechanically went through my tasks, but my mind was elsewhere. That evening, Tom's reaction was the final blow. "You got a formal warning? Margaret, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just do your job like a normal person?" "Because helping people matters to me, Tom." "When did that become wrong?" "When it started jeopardizing our financial security. We're not young anymore, Margaret. You can't afford to lose this job. You're being incredibly selfish and, honestly, stupid." Something inside me shattered. Selfish? I'm selfish for helping someone? Yes, you're putting strangers ahead of your own family, your own security. It's like you want to play hero at everyone else's expense. Grow up. I stared at the man I'd been married to for nearly 3 decades and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. Or maybe I did, and that was worse. Maybe this cynical, dismissive person had always been there, and I'd just been too busy trying to keep the peace to notice. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living this way, being made to feel guilty for the one thing that made me feel human. The next morning, I submitted my resignation to Richard. He looked surprised, but quickly recovered. Well, Margaret, perhaps this is for the best. I hope you find something more suited to your particular priorities. His condescension rolled off me. I'd already moved beyond caring what he thought. I cleaned out my desk, said quiet goodbyes to co-workers who seemed more relieved than sorry to see me go, and walked out of that office for the last time. The autumn air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe fully. Tom's reaction that evening was explosive. You quit? Without even discussing it with me? Have you lost your mind? Maybe I have, I said calmly. Or maybe I've just found it. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired of apologizing for caring about people. I'm tired of being made to feel like there's something wrong with me because I help others. And I'm tired of living with someone who can't see any value in that. Oh, here we go. Saint Margaret, martyr for the poor and needy. You're ridiculous, and you're cruel, I replied quietly. When did you become so cruel, Tom? He didn't answer, just stormed off to his study and slammed the door. I stood in our living room, surrounded by years of accumulated stuff that represented a life I no longer wanted, and started making plans. I'd saved money over the years in a separate account Tom didn't know about. Money my mother had left me when she passed. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give me options. I contacted a lawyer and filed for separation. I found a small apartment in a quieter neighborhood and began moving my things. Tom was shocked, then angry, then finally indifferent. Maybe that indifference hurt most of all, the realization that he didn't really care enough to fight for us. During this tumultuous time, I kept thinking about Dorothy. I found myself going back to that park, hoping to see her again. On a cold October afternoon, I did. She was bundled up in a thick coat, feeding pigeons from a paper bag. When she saw me, her face lit up with recognition. My dear friend, I've been hoping to see you. Please, sit with me. I sat and we talked for over an hour. I told her everything, about quitting my job, about leaving my husband, about feeling lost, but somehow more found than I'd been in decades. She listened without judgment, occasionally squeezing my hand. You know, she said finally, my late husband used to say that the bravest thing a person can do is stay true to themselves when the whole world tells them they're wrong. You're brave, Margaret. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Tears streamed down my face. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. That's how you know it's real bravery, dear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite it. We exchanged phone numbers, and Dorothy became more than just someone I'd helped. She became a genuine friend. She introduced me to her daughter, Linda, who worked as a director at a nonprofit organization that provided services for elderly residents. When Linda learned about my administrative background and my genuine care for seniors, she offered me a position as a volunteer coordinator. The pay isn't great, Linda admitted, but the work is meaningful. We help people like my mom maintain their independence and dignity. I think you'd be perfect for it. I accepted immediately. The salary was indeed lower than my previous job, but my new apartment cost less, and without Tom's expensive habits to support, I managed just fine. More importantly, I woke up each morning actually wanting to go to work. I organized community programs, connected elderly residents with resources, trained volunteers, and spent my days surrounded by people who valued compassion as much as I did. My children were surprised by the separation, but ultimately supportive. My daughter, Emily, called from Seattle and said, "Mom, I have to be honest. Dad's been kind of a jerk for years. I'm proud of you for finally putting yourself first." Months passed. I settled into my new life with a sense of peace I'd forgotten existed. My apartment was small but sunny, filled with plants and books and art that I actually liked, rather than the sterile furniture Tom had always insisted on. I joined a book club, started taking yoga classes, and reconnected with old friends I drifted away from during my marriage. I wasn't dating. That felt too raw still. But I was rediscovering who Margaret actually was beneath all those years of compromise and conformity. Then, one rainy afternoon in December, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Jennifer, my former co-worker from the marketing firm. "Margaret, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from your personnel file before they purged it. I needed to tell you something." "Of course, Jennifer. What's going on? You remember Richard, our boss? Well, karma has a sense of humor. He had a heart attack last month. Not fatal, thank God, but serious enough that he's had to take extended medical leave. And guess what? Nobody wanted to help him. His assistant quit rather than visit him in the hospital. His team sent a generic card. The man who spent years saying efficiency and results, where everything found himself completely alone when he actually needed people. I felt a complex mix of emotions. That's terrible. Is he okay? He's recovering, but he's apparently pretty shaken up. He's been doing a lot of reflecting, I guess, but that's not why I called. Margaret, the firm is a mess without someone competent running the administrative side. They've gone through 3 temps and nothing works. Everyone keeps saying how much better things were when you were here. They're asking if you'd consider coming back at a higher salary. I laughed, surprising myself. No thank you, Jennifer. I'm happy where I am. Really? But the money isn't everything. I like what I do now. I like who I am now. There was a pause. You know what, Margaret? Good for you. You always were too good for that place. I hung up feeling validated in a way I hadn't expected. The people who'd dismissed me, who'd called me naive and foolish, were now recognizing what they'd lost. But more importantly, I recognized what I'd gained, myself. Christmas came, and I spent it with Dorothy and her family. Linda had invited me to their celebration, and I felt more welcome at their table than I had in my own home for years. Tom sent a brief text wishing me happy holidays, nothing more. I heard through Emily that he was already dating someone new, a woman from his office who apparently shared his views on efficiency and practicality. I felt nothing but relief. In February, I received another surprise. There was a ceremony at City Hall honoring community volunteers, and Linda had nominated me for an award recognizing outstanding service to elderly residents. I won, standing on that stage, holding a plaque, and looking out at an audience that included Dorothy, Linda, my children who'd flown in to surprise me, and dozens of seniors I'd helped over the months. I felt a fullness in my chest that I'd never experienced in all my years of corporate achievement. During my acceptance speech, I spoke honestly. A year ago, someone called me naive for believing that helping others mattered. Someone else rolled their eyes at my compassion as if it were a character flaw. They made me doubt myself, made me feel foolish for caring. But I've learned something important. The people who mock kindness are usually the ones who need it most and fear it most. They're afraid because compassion requires vulnerability, requires acknowledging our shared humanity. It's easier to be cynical, to protect yourself behind walls of supposed practicality, but it's a lonely way to live. I'd rather be called naive 1,000 times than lose my ability to see another person's struggle and respond with kindness. The applause was warm and genuine. Afterward, Dorothy hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, dear. Look what you've built from one simple act of carrying grocery bags." She was right. That moment in the park had been a seed that grew into a completely different life. Not an easier life necessarily, but an authentic one. I'd lost a job and a marriage, but I'd gained a purpose and a community. I'd been criticized and dismissed, but I'd also been honored and appreciated. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my own values instead of letting others define them for me. One afternoon in March, I saw Tom for the first time since the divorce had been finalized. We'd agreed to meet at a coffee shop to sign some final paperwork. He looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. We sat across from each other, signed documents in awkward silence, and then he surprised me. "You seem happy," he said, sounding almost confused. "I am. I don't understand it. You gave up so much. The house, the financial security, our life together. For what? To work at a nonprofit for half the salary?" I smiled gently. "I gave up a life that was making me miserable, Tom, and I gained one that makes me feel alive. That's not something you can put a price on." He shook his head. "You always were too emotional, too idealistic, and you always thought that was an insult. But it's who I am, Tom. It's who I want to be. I'm sorry you could never see the value in that. We parted ways outside the coffee shop, and I knew it would probably be the last time I'd see him. There was no anger, no regret, just a quiet acceptance that we'd grown into incompatible people, or perhaps had always been incompatible and just hadn't wanted to admit it. As spring arrived and Chicago began to thaw, I found myself reflecting on the entire journey. That Tuesday morning when I'd first helped Dorothy seemed like a lifetime ago, yet it had been less than a year. In that time, I dismantled an entire existence and rebuilt something completely different. People often talk about transformation as if it's a smooth, inspiring process, but the reality was messy and painful and uncertain. There were nights I'd cried myself to sleep, mornings I'd questioned every decision, moments I'd wondered if everyone else was right and I was just being foolishly stubborn. But there were also moments of pure joy that I'd never experienced in my old life. Like the afternoon I helped a 90-year-old veteran connect with services that allowed him to stay in his home instead of moving to a facility. Or the day I organized a Valentine's party at the senior center and watched people who'd been isolated and lonely dance and laugh together. Or the morning Dorothy called just to tell me she loved me like a daughter. And I realized I'd found family in the most unexpected place. The criticism hadn't stopped entirely. Some relatives thought I'd made reckless decisions. A few old friends clearly believed I'd had some sort of midlife crisis, but I'd learned to let those judgments roll off me. I understood now that people project their own fears and limitations onto others. Richard had mocked my compassion because he was terrified of his own vulnerability. Tom had dismissed my kindness because acknowledging its value would have required him to examine his own lack of it. They weren't bad people necessarily, just scared ones who'd built walls so high they'd forgotten what it felt like to truly connect with another human being. I thought about Dorothy often, about how that chance encounter had catalyzed everything. She'd needed help carrying groceries, and in helping her, I'd found the strength to carry my own burdens. She'd been lost on a bus route, and in guiding her home, I'd found my own way. The universe works in mysterious patterns like that. Connections we can't predict or control, but that change us fundamentally if we're open to them. Now, standing in my little apartment on a sunny April morning, watering the plants on my windowsill and preparing for another day at work I actually loved, I felt grateful. Grateful for the criticism that had pushed me to examine my values. Grateful for the dismissal that had freed me to find appreciation elsewhere. Grateful for the end of a marriage that had been dead long before it was buried. And especially grateful for a kind elderly woman who'd needed help with groceries and had inadvertently helped me carry the weight of a life that no longer fit. The people who called me naive had been wrong. Kindness isn't naive. It's brave. It's radical. In a world that constantly tells us to look out for ourselves, to prioritize personal gain over communal good, to protect our hearts behind layers of cynicism, choosing compassion is an act of rebellion. It's a declaration that we refuse to accept that cruelty and indifference are just how things are. It's an insistence on a different way, a better way, even when that way is harder. Did Richard and Tom regret their words? I don't know. Richard apparently had his moment of reflection after his health crisis, but whether it fundamentally changed him, I can't say. Tom seemed content in his new relationship with someone who shared his worldview. Their regret or lack thereof didn't matter to me anymore. My journey wasn't about proving them wrong or making them see my value. It was about seeing my own value, about honoring the person I'd always been, but had somehow learned to suppress. I still help elderly people I encounter on the street. I still stop to assist strangers who look lost or overwhelmed. I still choose kindness even when it's inconvenient or when people suggest I'm being taken advantage of, because that's who I am. That's who I want to be. And I've built a life that celebrates that rather than punishing it. As I locked my apartment door and headed to work that morning, I smiled at a young mother struggling with a stroller on the stairs and offered to help. She looked surprised but grateful, and as we navigated the steps together, I saw a glimpse of myself 25 years ago, trying to manage everything alone. After I helped her to the sidewalk, she thanked me profusely. "You're so kind," she said. "People don't help like this anymore." "Some of us do," I replied. "And maybe you'll pass it along someday when someone else needs it." She smiled and promised she would. I continued my walk to the train, feeling the morning sun on my face, and realized that this was victory. Not revenge against people who'd dismissed me, not validation from those who doubted me, but simply the quiet satisfaction of living in alignment with my values. That was the real happy ending. Not that the critics came crawling back or that the mockers ate their words, but that I'd found the courage to define success on my own terms. The day I helped that old lady again, my boss called me naive and my wife rolled her eyes. They thought they were putting me in my place, teaching me a harsh lesson about the real world. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to leave their world behind and create one of my own. And if that's naive, then I'll wear that label proudly, like a badge of honor, because it represents everything good I'd almost lost and everything valuable I eventually found.